Okay, so you've just been diagnosed with cancer, and I don't even know what stage or grade, but just hearing the six-letter word just elicits some type of fear, and you just feel like you've been gut punched. Everybody has their opinions, everybody's going to start asking questions, and you really start feeling almost numb because you feel like you are now in a whole world that you had never delved into. Suddenly, all the things you were doing come to a screeching halt, and now you're trying to figure out how you're going to navigate appointments, doctor visits, scans, maybe making all these other changes that you need to make, and you don't really know what else you're going to do because you've never done this before and nobody gave you the instruction manual on it. So one thing I wished I had realized was that I did have time, and I didn't think I had time. I was being told I had to get part of my breast removed. Then they were telling me that I had to have the nipples possibly removed because the cancer was close to that area of my body. And then, well, do you want to do both sides? Because it could potentially be in the other. Just because it didn't show up on the scan doesn't mean it's not there. And you're listening to all these things while still trying to navigate regular life. Like, okay, I've got 3 small kids to feed and help them with their schoolwork and take them to their different athletic or other events. And some of that stuff got put on hold, but in some ways, it was better for the kids to keep busy because then there was more of a sense of normalcy, and it allowed them to focus on things with their friends and activities they enjoyed while I could focus more on studying and looking things up because I was now in uncharted territory. Even though I had been a nurse for many years, this was new because now I was a patient, not the one taking opportunity to care for somebody else. It was my self-care that I had to focus on. So I like to call this the fork in the road analogy. Every single decision you make, every single day, there's a fork in the road. You make it yes or no, you're going to go one way or the other. And with cancer, there are definitely things I wish now, looking back, that I had chosen the other path, but I didn't know. So what I've come to the conclusion with when I've prayed about it is God showed me, you know what, you did the best with the information that you had at the time. But while I was praying and focusing on getting well and trying to figure out how to combat the cancer, I also realized, because there was enormous pressure from the medical establishment, that I had to get started on chemotherapy right away. I had to get surgery right away because it was a stage 4, 3+ grade cancer. And in cancer terminology, that's the worst kind you can have. So I really had this horrible sense that I had to make a decision right away because I needed to just remove it from my body. I've since learned through my studies that cancer is systemic. Just cutting off a piece of the body isn't going to necessarily solve the problem because, like I said before, cancer cells are ubiquitous, they're everywhere. But if your immune system is functioning properly, then it will take care of those rogue cancer cells and it will kill them. But when you develop a cancer, your immune system is not functioning optimally. It's actually stagnant, or it's just not functioning at all, or your natural killer cells and your macrophages and all your different lymphocytes and whatnot, they're not working properly. Your liver's not detoxifying toxins, and it becomes sluggish and backed up, and there's just a whole series of unfortunate events. And so you just feel like a deer in the headlight, and it's a very scary feeling. I know what that feels like. Sometimes you want to say something, but you can't even get the words out. And I remember thinking about, in the Bible, there were things I would just say to God in my head because I didn't even know how to say them out loud. I couldn't even say what the verses were, but I knew what they were internally. And I would just silently pray for them. And I just prayed that I would make the right decision because a lot of it was a guessing game. So what I want to tell you is, from my experience, I let fear drive a lot of my decisions. I don't want you to feel like you have to make a decision right away. Now, there are very few cases where you have to make a decision that day. For most people, you have some time. And when I realize now, looking back, I went so extreme because I kept feeling like I wasn't going to be here. When my husband was told I had 3 months left, that felt like there was this impending doom. I had to make decisions lickety-split right away because he was facing the possibility of being a single parent at that time, and it was very scary. I didn't even think of myself necessarily. I was just thinking, how am I going to live and survive? And that became a very overwhelming feeling for me. I know other people who have gone through a similar journey, and it's the same thing. You're not thinking about the decisions you're making necessarily because you're just trying to think of survival. How do I stay alive? It doesn't matter what I cut off. It doesn't matter what I remove. It doesn't matter what procedure I undergo. I just need to be here for my husband, for my children, for my family, extended family, relatives, parents, whatever it might be, whoever it might be. Acting out of fear usually leads to the quick decisions that the medical establishment would like you to make, the cut, poison, burn approach. But very often there are other things out there. And unfortunately, like I've said before, you can't find out a lot of this information from medical doctors and DOs, doctors of osteopathy, because they're not taught these things. I will say I did have to see some other types of alternative doctors, like naturopathic doctors and integrative medical doctors and functional nutrition or functional medicine doctors, because these providers had additional training in nutrition, lifestyle changes, how to augment cortisol, and looking at the HPA, which is your hypothalamus pituitary axis, adrenal gland axis, and they looked at all these other things that my regular doctors weren't looking at. So I would say, looking back, I know that people tend to do better when they use an integrative approach, and they're using both aspects of medicine. The cut, poison, burn approach, I'm not 100% against it. I know it has helped a lot of people. They even have things that are continually evolving, like CAR T-cell therapy for certain cases of cancer, and it has done wonders for some people. I'm just pointing out the fact that there are a lot of things that are out there, some plants, nutrients, that we're just not being given information about. And it would behoove you to explore all that research and to look into those things. But I can tell you this, if you go to your medical doctor and say, well, what about this? What if I add this to my regimen? Chances are he's going to tell you not to take it. And one of the reasons for that is he or she does not know much about that information. One of the things I'll eventually show you is how you can look up peer-reviewed research on articles so that you yourself can find information that might help a particular type of cancer that you or a loved one has. So just physically fixing your body isn't enough. There was a book written by Dr. Kelly A. Turner. It was called Radical Remission. She was a researcher at a social worker, I believe, at Harvard, who studied people who experienced radical remissions. And she went around the world for 3 years, and she eventually did her doctoral dissertation in Berkeley, California. And what she learned was that there are people all over the world who would suddenly heal from a terminal illness. Most of the cases that she explored were cancer. And she thought, why are we not looking into this more often? Well, one of the things that she pointed out was, yes, diet is a helpful facet, nutrition, sleep, exercise. Those were great. But there was an enormous component, and that was the emotional, mental, and spiritual portion. And I would say that initially when I went through cancer, I was focusing just on the physical, like get this cancer out of my body so that I can get well and heal, and then I can move on and get back to doing what I was doing. But that's the problem. Whatever I was doing was actually causing the cancer to grow and proliferate. When I went to the medical doctors, nobody ever really helped me understand. When I'd ask, well, how did this happen? Nobody was interested in helping me explore root causes. And I did see an integrative medical doctor, a doctor of osteopathy at one point, and he started looking at all my estrogen metabolites, and my estradiol metabolites were sky high. He also pointed out that because I was an athlete in high school and did soccer and track and ballet, I was put on birth control pills at a young age because I wasn't having menstrual cycles. And that was the solution back then. But early use of BCPs, birth control pills, is complicit with endocrine-related cancers. And by endocrine, I'm referring to breast, uterus, ovaries, thyroid, pancreas. These are your endocrine glands. And so we didn't know. That's probably what happened. I was put on them early. No way to really verify. But the point is, I was put on these, and as a result, I was being given synthetic hormones for many years, and it caused a bunch of problems later on. One of the other problems with dealing with things physically is that you're eliminating the spiritual component. And I would say now, here I am, 2026, so we're looking at well over 10 years now. The spiritual component was huge. For me, a lot of it had to do with so much fear. I was so fearful. I'd seen friends who had died. I've lost a lot of friends and companions, acquaintances, people I've known with cancer. And I always felt like I was like tippy-toeing, like, God, am I going to live? Am I going to survive? And one of the things I started doing was really studying what the scripture said about healing. Now, everybody's not going to agree with me on this, but I believe that when the scriptures talk about in the books of Isaiah and Peter, by his stripes I am healed and I was healed. And I started claiming that. I'd start speaking to the cancer. Jesus said, speak to your mountain. He didn't say speak about your mountain. He said speak to your mountain. And that's what I started doing. I know there are studies that show plants actually start growing well, and they do better, and they're healthier when you are kindly speaking to them. As crazy as that sounds, there's something to do with the different frequencies and the decibels and the tone of our voice. Well, I got to the point where with the cancer, I was ticked off. I was so angry that I had this. And then I started rebuking it, telling it to get out of my body, telling it to leave. And I was not going to just sit by idly and just allow it to take over my body. And that was something that I can go into more detail about, but I really began to look at all the scriptures where Jesus healed people. He never turned a single person away. There are some verses in the Bible where it says he could not heal or couldn't heal everyone, or he could heal only a few. Why? Because of their doubt and unbelief. And this was something I've learned through a pastor one time. He talked about, the faith is the size of a mustard seed, which is very small. And I picture it on a seesaw. And you have, seesaw's either going to be up or down, this way or that way. And what I realized was that with that little mustard size seed of faith, I had a choice to make. You can have faith, and that will go up, but your doubt and your unbelief, that's like, well, what did the doctor say? Or what did your lab marker say? Or what did so-and-so point out? What did the doctor or the scan results say? I had to start listening to what God told me I was, which was that he wants the best for me. He wants me healed. And yet, this is the part, the unbelief and doubt, that I had to keep suppressing. So I wouldn't listen to negative comments. I wouldn't listen to people's negativity. I began telling my oncologist, I don't want to see those results. And something interesting happened. I began feeling better. And so I just wanted to point out just a little twist in just how I began to operate. And I talk to God and I pray to God about it. And then I listen. And I spend a lot more time with God over the last several years than I had back then, because I was in panic mode. But I really wish, looking back, that I had just spent more time in the Word thinking about what it was that He said and focusing on His words, because I know His words are true, and not focusing on what everyone else around me had to say and what their opinions were. And that's the biggest message I want to leave with you right now, is that you need to focus on what the Word of God says in healing. There's so much in the Bible on healing. You see, I think it's 47 verses at least in all the different books on how healing occurred. It wasn't always the same, but not one person that came to Jesus was turned away. Not one time did he say, well, it's not my Father's will to heal you. No, God's name is Jehovah Rapha, the Lord who heals. And so I really started focusing on that aspect of who he was more than any other feature, even though there's so many other wonderful things. And the other thing I realized was I felt like God was just putting up with me, but I realized that he really loved me. And if there's anything I want you to understand, is that you are dearly loved. And you need to remember that he has plans for you, plans to prosper you. We will not escape persecution in this life. Everybody is going to have some suffering at some point, but it's how you rise through it and above it that's going to get you through this. And take notes, write. I journal things all the time because I always want to look back and say, where was I? What did I come through? How did God bring me through this particular problem or feature, aspect of something that was so horrific, and how did I rise through it? And I know you can do that too. Don't give in, get mad at the devil. And I don't ever tell anybody to go to hell, but I do tell Satan all the time, you can go right back to hell where you belong. And it feels good to say that out loud. So I'm going to leave you with that for today.